Red Polly.
Dusty.
Blue Poncho.
Tupac.
Street.
Hey, Wilson Hoosier. Hey, Elvis.
Blue 58. Go.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Health Matters, Episode 8, Week 4 Roundup. Brandon, take it away.
Tyler, how was the injuries this week? Tell us who the big news from injuries week 4.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks. Well, one of the big ones, I guess the big game of injuries was that Steelers-Houston game. And one of the big injuries to come out of there was Kenny Pickett. He hurt his knee in the game, turned out to be an MCL sprain. Now, Doc, you deal with MCL sprains all the time, surgically, non-surgically. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Tyler, vast majority of MCLs are non-surgical. You'll be put in a brace through a little bit of rehab. If you look at our data from the predictors, you're going to be missing anywhere from 2.5 to 3 games on average, but that's highly dependent on the severity of the MCL sprain. There are 3 types, grade 1, 2, 3. Depends on the severity of it in terms of when you come back, but it could be as soon as 1 to 2 weeks. When you certainly look at the video, it looks like a pretty high grade MCL from at least the energy that went into it. But you really have to do the examination MRI to get the final call in terms of grade of the MCL. And that will really dictate when he comes back, anywhere from 1 to 2 up to maybe 6 weeks. But could come back in a brace, given his position will just be much less mobile as the quarterback.
Got it. Well, in other injury news, one of the big ones was Tre'Davious White. Now, usually the beginning of the season, we see a lot of injuries and then they start to taper off some, but it seemed that week 4 brought just as many as the first 3 weeks. Tre'Davious White was another big one, suffered an Achilles tear, what looks to be an Achilles tear, non-contact, had to be taken out on the cart. Doc, thoughts on the Achilles tear in that position as a cornerback? What's it take to come back from that?
Yeah, Achilles tear is big in a cornerback. It's a lot because it's all about the explosiveness, the jump capability. It's why vertical leap is measured at the combine, and really look closely at cornerbacks because of the ability to jump up, deflect passes, catch balls, etc. So this happened when a non-contact injury in the third quarter while guarding actually Miami wide receiver Tyreek Hill. It was non-contact on the turf, but keep in mind he's coming off an ACL from last season. He came back, week 10, was off a little bit week 11, and then back week 12 last year. So is coming back from that ACL. Obviously had a great offseason, but unfortunately for Tre'Davious, it's feared it's going to be an Achilles and need surgery and likely out the rest of the season. Obviously, once he gets surgery.
Yes, that's a tough break for the Bills defense and Tre'Davious for sure. Justin Herbert, quarterback for the Chargers, went out with a hand injury after throwing an interception. He tried to make the tackle, got his finger caught in between helmets. Now he's calling it just a flesh wound. We saw him come back to the game with a splint on that middle finger of his non-throwing hand. He was able to complete the game, but Doc, what are your thoughts on this going forward? He says it's just a flesh wound. Do you feel the same, or do you think there's more to it?
Just when you see it, he had what we call an alumifoam splint in his non-throwing middle finger. It was on the extensor side of his middle finger, and it was taped. Usually that means you had a finger joint dislocation that was popped back in place. You can use small little splints, but if it's a bigger one, sometimes that means the joint is unstable or you had a fracture. So I'm concerned about fracture. I'm concerned, maybe it was a flesh wound. If it was a flesh wound with a fracture, then that's an open fracture. And, it certainly thinks about surgery for what we wash it out, we stabilize the fracture. The good news is non-throwing hand, he could be back pretty quickly, even if this needs surgery for even just a washout, or say there is a subluxation dislocation. Maybe there's some small pins, small screws that are needed, but you can splint this up pretty well and get back in 1 to 2 weeks, even worst case scenario, if he needed surgery. Now let's hope he doesn't need surgery, but if he does, should be back pretty quickly.
All right. There you have it, right from the Doc's mouth. Next up, T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Bengals, went out, has a rib fracture. Now, Doc, we've talked about these a few times. Rib fractures in that wide receiver position, obviously breathing, getting hit, tackled, all of those are impacted. What are you thinking with this, with T. Higgins? Do you think he's going to be out for a while, or do you think this is something that can heal up pretty quickly and use some padding, maybe even some injections to get him back?
Yeah, I think all the above. Some good Kevlar padding, some special pads that are put on with cover roll. The athletic trainers do a great job with this, but you still need those ribs to be able to generate power, to be able to rotate, to have this strong torque that's needed to do to do his job as wide receiver in the NFL. And so it's sore for a while. You can definitely do some injections. You can do some of these other things, but this is multiple weeks. Last year he's pretty healthy. Had concussion, ankle injury, a thigh injury. Really didn't miss too much time. Was questionable a few times on the injury report after some of these injuries. But I think we'll see T. Higgins back pretty quickly in the next several weeks, if not sooner. I do think his performance is going to be down and just snap percentage a little bit limited due to just soreness and inability to generate that torque in the rib cage.
Understood. So if he's on your fantasy team, keep that in mind. Mike Evans. Mike Evans had to leave the game with a hamstring injury. We know he's dealt with some of these in the past. Wide receivers, hamstrings. I mean, really any skilled position with that hamstring, Doc. We've been seeing a lot of them this year. Uh, what's going on with this? What's going on with Mike Evans? Is this something that he's going to miss 2 games for, 3 games, or is this something quick, do you think?
Yeah, we'll have to see. He's undergoing more tests. I mean, and that likely is an MRI. It's the best thing we use to be able to assess how the hamstring, how much it's torn, how much disruption, how much edema around the muscle. He has had, a few injuries, and he's been in the league a long time. He knows how to rehab this. I would expect anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, but we'll see how the tests come back. It's important for his position to have his hamstring function well. And the worst thing you want to do here is rush Mike back before his hamstring is able to go be a full go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have a article on the predictors.com that actually talks about wide receivers and skilled position with hamstring injuries. And when you come back too early, it definitely has that higher risk of re-injury and miss way more games than you originally thought. So definitely something he's going to want to take care of.
And Tyler, the other thing is, it's not just the hamstring you re-injure when you come back. I mean, there's other injuries that happen that are associated with hamstring. I think that's because of the overall kinetic chain is just not fully there. And so, what else do we see? Ankle injuries, hip injuries, and also knee injuries.
Yeah, for sure. A big loss for the Patriots defense. Matthew Judon with a distal biceps rupture in yesterday's game. Doc, this is a big hit for a defense who Matthew Judon might be their best player. What are your thoughts on this type of injury, and what does this look like for him?
Yeah, Matt Judon's an incredible player, and perhaps not even just the best defensive player on the Patriots, probably one of the best players on the Patriots right now, and so they're going to feel this loss. This is unfortunately basically a season-ending surgery. It needs surgery. You have to repair the distal biceps. These are things we don't. It's what I call an injury of necessity. You've got to have surgery on it because otherwise you get atrophy of the biceps muscle. The tendon retracts. You need to have the biceps for his position. Now, what's interesting is you think your biceps you can still flex and flex your elbow with the biceps being completely gone. Why is that? There's other muscles around the forearm elbow axis that allow you to do this maneuver. But the biceps is important for what we call supination and a little bit of strength of the curl. But it's why people do the curls, like supination curls, for your biceps, is because that's really the main biceps is this supination or twisting the wrist, and that's important for his position. But unfortunately, it's likely a season-ending surgery for Matt Judon, and the Patriots are really going to miss him.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough blow for them and for him for the rest of this season, especially how their season's been going thus far. Speaking of defensive players, Myles Garrett of the Browns left yesterday's game with a boot. It's a calling it a foot injury. Doc, what are you thinking here? Another big hit for defenses here.
Yeah, it's hard to say. With a foot, there's a lot of different things. Obviously, we think of certain things like turf toe or the big toe stuff, which certainly this at least looked like initially, but it's hard to tell. You obviously get some more tests and work through it with X-rays, MRI, and see exactly what this foot injury is. There's also some other what we call tarsal bones in the foot that are really important, and sometimes those can be strained. You can get some bone bruises, even up to what we call a stress fracture of some of these bones. So we'll keep a close eye on this to see the severity, but hopefully for the Browns, especially because they're starting to get a little bit beat up, that he can come back pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all reports now are saying he'll be back after the bye week, so let's hope he makes it back on the field. He's a great player to watch.
Right, which usually means the key thing is you got to make sure the bones are okay, that there's no stress fracture, the navicular, or some of these other bones in the top of your foot. So usually what that ends up being is kind of a capsular strain of the great toe or some of the toe areas that can be a problem.
Yep. There's a lot of big names on that report this week, Tyler. Ryan, who's on the concussion list this week?
Yeah, so we had a few notable players who went into concussion protocol this week. Starting off, we got Ryan Neal, safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next up, we got Andres Pete, offensive guard for the New Orleans Saints. And closing it out, we got John Feliciano, the center for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, with concussions, we know that rest truly helps and they perform better off of them. But then we have other injuries that players, they might come back early from. Derek Carr, he had his AC joint, Joe Burrow, his calf. They both came back early, didn't perform well. What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, unfortunately for these guys, this is predicted. We know this coming back too early from calf, coming back too early from AC, from shoulder separation, etc. Our data at the Predictors is pretty strong on this. You just don't perform as well the first couple games back, especially if you come back pretty early after the initial injury. Now, Joe Burrow's been dealing with this off and on, so he's in a completely different category when we look at our data, but all very predicted, Ryan.
Yeah, Tyler. Derek Carr had that poor performance. Fantasy owners were mad as well. What do you think of that coming back from the AC joint and the throwing shoulder that early?
Yeah, if anyone played Derek Carr for fantasy, that's on them. The Predictors social media, we even put it out there that if he played this week, he was a no play for sure. When you're a throwing athlete and you're coming back from that type of injury, even with an injection, even with some padding there, you just didn't see him performing at those Derek Carr levels. And sure enough, he came in and that's the performance we got. I really wish they had let him sit this one out, play Jameis Winston for a week. I'm sure he wanted to play, meaning Derek Carr wanted to play, but I think it was too early for him.
So one player that we did have on the injury report 2 weeks ago, David Montgomery, he had a thigh contusion. He came back Thursday night with a vengeance, 121 yards and 3 touchdowns. How do you like that performance, Tyler?
Yeah, that was fantastic. I know a lot of people are mad at Dan Campbell because he's not playing Jahmyr Gibbs, and a lot of fantasy players picked up Jahmyr Gibbs early in their drafts, but you really can't argue with what David Montgomery's been able to do. Like you said, 3 touchdowns, 34 points, anywhere over 30, depending on what type of league you play in. I mean, an unbelievable performance by him. So, if he was on your team, hopefully you had him in, but it was an unbelievable performance. He did a great job. So,
yeah, I had him on my roster, so I was glad to see him back on there.
Love that. He was in your active roster, right? Not on your bench. I know someone who had him on their bench. That's a bad play.
Yeah, definitely got to put him in that starting lineup. So the 49ers, they were a big news this week. They have a very healthy team right now. They're number 5 on the bus scores, and they're continuing to have a lot of success and winning, and most of their star players are still in the field. How do you feel about the 49ers, Doc?
Yeah, health matters. The 49ers look unstoppable. Honestly, probably one of the top-rated teams in the NFL right now, if not number one. They stay healthy, they're going to go a deep run, no question. But health matters for this team. We've seen it before with the 49ers, and stuff can happen. And I'm worried, as always, starting week 5, 6, 7, things can happen.
Yeah, Tyler, any thoughts on the 49ers and their health status?
Like we said, last year they had they didn't have great health and they still performed well, got to the playoffs. So this year, if they can keep that up, then they're primed to have a fantastic season. I agree with Doc. I think they're the best team in the league right now. I know some people had Miami up there, but there's something about the 49ers. They just seem stable with their performance every week. It's very stable. You know it's going to happen, but people can't stop it, other teams. Whereas, teams like Miami and the Eagles, sometimes they seem a little bit streaky. So I'm all on board with the 49ers. I agree with Doc. I think they're the best team in the NFL right now.
That's fun to watch. I was there for a year. It was a great organization to be a part of. Ryan, tell us some more about the bus scores. How are we looking this week coming out of that?
Yeah, so going into this weekend, we had the Cincinnati Bengals at the top of the bus score with a score of 93.7. Their game kind of shocking that in their performance, they didn't perform as well as we were expecting them to. Granted, Joe Burrow's hurt, and their bus score is most likely going to be going down this week. I believe T. Higgins left the game, so they're not going to be too hot. Washington Commanders are coming in at number 2. They played great game against the Eagles. Eagles, I mean, you can make an argument that they could be the number 1 team over the 49ers. I'd say it's those 2 teams at the top of the league. And I mean, the Commanders took the Eagles to OT. They could have gotten that dub. I wish they did. They would have won me a lot of money if they won that, but it can only get so much. But they were able to cover, able to play well, bringing it to OT. And then obviously we got the Chiefs coming out, rounding out the top 3. Chiefs are always going to be solid team. They got great training staff over there, and it shows in how they perform every week.
Yeah, surprising when the Texans, they're last in the bus score. However, they're just competing. They're playing through adversity with the rookie quarterback. How do you feel about the Texans, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud has been incredible after a 30-6 win, and Texans continue to shine. They're actually getting healthier. Not a lot of banged up stuff this week for them, so we're going to see them soar up in the banged up score, and clearly their performance is mattering, and which is great because they've had a last few seasons been really tough for them, and it's good to see them coming back.
Yeah, they also have wide receiver Nico Collins. Tyler, has anybody drafted him? Where's he at in the fantasy world?
Yeah, he's playing fantastic. His last week was a little bit down, but the weeks before that he did fantastic, and then he came back, bounced back this week, had a little over 30 points, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, he really crushed it in the fantasy world. Plus, you have Tank Dell on that team. Who's a rookie wide receiver as well. And CJ Stroud loves throwing to him. So, I mean, that team they're really coming together despite some injury issues. And then, of course, in this past game, they were playing Pittsburgh, who had their own injury issues. But fantastic team to watch, and a lot of good guys on there for fantasy.
Yeah. Tyler, keep it going. Tell us what other game surprised you this week.
Oh, surprised me. Probably the Broncos-Bears game was a big surprise. As everyone saw, the Bears were up 28-7. Justin Fields looked good. I think everyone was finally feeling that Fields had gotten into his rhythm. And obviously you can't put this loss on him. He played a fantastic game. I think he had 4 touchdowns. But defense let Denver come back, and they came back and surprised them. So, the Bears go 0-4, and now Denver's 1-3. So something to think about going forward. We'll see if the Bears can pull it together or if it's another tough season. The shining light, I think I saw, was that they have right now, if they stay the way it is, they have the first and second round pick coming up this year. So something for them to think about. But obviously it's early in the season. Maybe they can turn something around and make it a little bit better for themselves.
Yeah, it was good to see the Denver Broncos finally pull off a win there too as well.
And what about the Jets? Jets. I mean, they almost had it against Kansas City on Sunday night. Maybe some controversial referee calls at the end. Certainly, Coach Saleh would think that as such. He got flagged at the end of the game, 15 yards for unsportsmanlike on a coach. That doesn't happen too often in the NFL when you look at it. But the Jets defense exposed some areas in Kansas City. I was really surprised about that one, and the Jets showed up, no question.
Yeah, we're just hoping Travis Kelce's not distracted too much by Taylor Swift.
If I have to see,
that's a little bit of offensive production down.
He only had 6 receptions. He might be a little bit distracted.
If I have to see Taylor Swift one more time on football days, it's unbelievable.
That's great. Good stuff. So the Ohio teams, they were pretty dominated this weekend. You had Cincinnati, who played Joe Burrow, who's still a little gimpy. Then you had the Browns, who sat Deshaun Watson. Two different strategies, and neither one paid off. So the Ohio teams, they're looking pretty rough this year, guys. All right, let's look at Monday night game tonight. The Seahawks and the Giants are playing. We have some big injury news on both sides. Saquon Barkley's doubtful with that high ankle. Tell us about that, Doc.
Yeah, they actually got downgraded to doubtful. It's been a lot of question about exactly what this ankle is. Just from looking at how this was injured, the video, everything certainly looks like a high ankle, but there are a wide variety of grades of high ankles. And this one, probably on the milder side, that they were even thinking he was going to be able to come back this week. I bet we see him next week, probably in a limited capacity. What's interesting, when you look at high ankle in running backs from the Predictors data, they miss on average 3.8 games. They're down about 20 to 25% on average the rest of the season. And the first few games don't look very good for them, down even like 30 to 40% in performance in rushing yards. So the high ankle's real in the running back, and it takes a little while to come back from. So we'll watch how this materializes for Saquon and the Giants. But he may be back next week. That's probably a little bit soon. We won't. I don't think we'll see the same performance. Now, the only thing about Saquon, and Tyler's going to correct me, is he's had this before, and he came back really well after 3 games. So I don't know, Tyler. What do you think, Saquon? He's just a different. He's just a different beast. The guy's a warrior.
Yeah, he's doubtful this week, so I think he'll, I don't think he'll play, but when he comes back, I agree. He gets after it. I think that's partially a use thing. I mean, they rely on him so much, which is probably also part of the reason that when it first came out, they said maybe he could be back quicker, and now it's taking some more time. I think he really makes sure that he is as healthy as possible before returning, whereas some other guys may rush back onto the field. I know he wants to get back out there just as much as any other player does, but his usage is so high that they need to make sure that he is at top health before they bring him back. So I agree with you. I would think he'd be down a little, but you just never know with him. Sometimes he can just kind of pop off. So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's done it before, so hopefully a second time around is the same. Sometimes the injuries can be additive. He's had it before. It can be additive, so he may be down a little bit. I agree with you, but he's done it at a high level.
Yeah, looking at the Seahawks, Noah Fant, their tight end, he popped up on the injury report Saturday with a knee injury, and he's been kind of coming on for 4 catches for 50 yards the past 2 games. So fantasy owners, if you got him in your lineup trying to get those last few points, that's something to watch out for this week as well. Who do you got in this game, Tyler?
I'm taking Seattle. I think the Giants are a little bit banged up. Seattle's defense gets Jamal Adams back, who's led that defense for a long time. So I'm going to take Seattle for the win, and I'm going to take Seattle to cover.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on that. Looking ahead to week 5, let's pick our game of the week for week 5. Each one of you give us a game. Let's start with Doc.
Yeah, this is easy. Everyone's going to be watching it Sunday night. Cowboys 49ers. We've been waiting for this one. It's a classic. So we'll be glued on Sunday night.
Okay, Tyler, how about you?
I'm looking forward to the Chiefs Vikings game. Actually, the Vikings are 1-3, the Chiefs are 3-1, but both of those teams have had very close games, with the Vikings going the wrong way, the Chiefs going the right way. So I'm really interested to see if the Vikings can pull one out here. I don't think the Chiefs look as dominant as they have in the past. Seems like they have a few struggles that they're trying to get through. So I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Okay, we like that one. And Ryan, what's your game of the week?
Yeah. So my game of the week is going to be the Panthers versus the Lions. The Lions have been playing unreal this year. It looks like they're actually going to be a legit team for once. It feels weird saying that the Lions are good, but And also I was watching the Panthers game yesterday. Bryce Young was looking pretty good. Granted, they still lost to Minnesota, but I think they were doing pretty good last game. So I'm excited for that game. I think it'll be a good one.
Okay, yeah, and my game of the week is going to be the Jaguars Bills. I'm going to call the Jaguar upset overseas over the Bills.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be over there for 2 weeks. They're acclimated already, so they'll be ready to go.
Nice. Big call, Brandon.
Right. All right, guys, we appreciate you listening this week. Check out thepredictors.com to follow the injuries all week. And always remember,
Health matters.